President Biden announcing new tariffs on $18 billion worth of Chinese imports. Of course, that announcement last week, quadrupling tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles from 25% to 100%. I spoke with North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum on Sunday Morning Futures about Biden suddenly changing his tune, taking a page out of Trump's book on Chinese tariffs in an election year. Watch.
Yeah, it's just interesting that Joe Biden in this election year, he's the one that complained about the Trump's tariffs. He's the one that said, if I'm elected, I'll get rid of them. And now he's trying to do kind of a head fake and say, oh, I'm actually strong on China. I'm going to add a few tariffs. But it's only 4% of what President Trump did. I mean, we're talking, a few billion versus President Trump had tariffs on over $300 billion of Chinese goods. That was a real blow to the Chinese and the Chinese economy. What Joe Biden is, he's protecting industries that are his voting blocks.
China announced its own investigation, saying that they are announcing an anti-dumping probe into chemical imports from the U.S. and the EU in an apparent retaliatory move. Joining me now is former U.S. Trade Representative and author of No Trade is Free, Robert Lighthizer, with us this morning. Bob, great to see you. Thanks so much for being here. I want to get your take on the Biden-China policy compared to what you did in the Trump administration. You were so tough on all of this, and we haven't heard a word holding China to account until this week, 6 months before an election. How would you characterize Biden's tariff plan?
Well, I would say it's it's too little, too late. First, I want to agree with the governor. It's nice that that candidate Biden criticized us and his administration studied what we did for 2 years and decided we were completely right, vindicated, and that he was wrong. But $18 billion is not nearly enough. President Trump has called for large tariff increases across the board on China. The first thing that's a little bit scary is it suggests that they really don't realize that they're an adversary, that they're an existential threat to the United States and to American jobs and the like. They're dealing with this like they were trying to protect an industry in a dispute with Switzerland. That's not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with an aggressive adversary. So clearly we need across-the-board tariffs, as President Trump has called for. The other thing that's interesting is by just protecting EVs, you're really making the hundreds of thousands of American workers who make internal combustion engines, you're making them more vulnerable, not less vulnerable. Let's remember that most of the cars that China exports are not EVs. They're classic internal combustion engines, and those are the ones that our workers in all across Ohio, where I'm from, but Michigan and central part of the United States are making. They're not making really EVs in any great numbers. So this is it's misguided. Clearly, we need to take this on. It's way past time to do it.
Yeah. Well, I spoke with Greg Brown yesterday, chairman and CEO of Motorola Solutions. That company was one of the first into China back in 1986, and they were one of the first out of China because of the property theft, the intellectual property theft, and the dumping of products. And here's what he told me. He said, Biden says he's doing a 100% tariff increase on electric vehicles. It sounds impressive, but the fact is 7% of the people in the U.S. are driving electric vehicles. And that's 2% of the imported EVs are actually coming from China. So when you actually look at how significant this is, it's not significant. It's not really consequential. It's more of a symbolic move. Is he just trying to convince people that he's tough on China?
See, it sounds to me a little bit like they had a conference room and it had some people that care about workers and some people that care about environmentalists, and the environmentalists won the argument. That's what's a little bit scary. We ought to be worrying about our manufacturing and our workers and not just the environment.
Yeah. What do you want to say to people who say, look, this is going to cause a trade war? I mean, I interviewed President Trump back in March and asked him this, or in February, and he said, look, we have to ensure that our companies are protected. What do you want to say to those globalists out there who say, yeah, sure, we understand national security, but let's not destroy the economy in the meantime because this is going to create a trade war? What's the answer, Bob?
Well, look at we are in a trade war. We've been in one for 20 years with China. The difference with President Trump, he's the first one that fought back. The others just let what we ended up with in America be the reciprocal of what China really didn't want. So we're in a trade war. And another thing I would add, there was a study out of China really that said that China suffered more than 3 times more from our actions than we did. So clearly we were on the right track. But the start of the whole analysis has to be, is China a friend or are they an adversary? Yeah. You just don't treat them like you would another economic partner. And if you don't realize that, then you're never going to get to the right answer.
Well, I don't think Biden realizes that, because he will not call them an adversary. He only calls them a competitor. And by the way, the other day, Janet Yellen was telling somebody, yeah, Trump's tariffs were a tax on the consumer. But Biden tariffs are very different because they're targeted. They're not a tax on the consumer.
Well, I mean, let's remember, the biggest part of what Biden decided last week was to continue our tariffs. I saw that quote. It makes literally no sense. First of all, as an economic matter, I do not believe that tariffs are taxes on the consumers. Sometimes they are, but mostly they are not. They're taxes on foreign production. But the notion that this 18% is targeted, he also decided to keep our $300 billion. Right. Which she's claiming now is a tax on consumers. The comment didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I saw it and thought about the same thing. But look at this, what Bloomberg is reporting, that China's market regulators are planning to meet with investors in Europe this week as part of this broader move by authorities to shore up interest in the world's second largest stock market and economy. Robert, your thoughts on this? Because I know that there are many, many companies that trade on U.S. exchanges right now. Some of those companies have already been sanctioned, and yet we got them on the New York Stock Exchange, on the NASDAQ, and investors are buying them. They're in all of these indexes, the MSCI index, and et cetera, et cetera. Isn't that investors, ordinary investors, funding the expansion of our number one enemy, our number one adversary? Talk to us about the outlook of the Chinese economy and why it is that we don't have any commander-in-chief to actually take the capital markets lever and use that against China on its after its behavior.
So I've been very clear that I think we have to regulate outbound investment and inbound investment between the United States and China once you realize that they are a threat. But on this issue of investment, they have a problem. They have a conundrum. At the same time, they want more investment because what they want to do is get out of their economic problems by shifting more resources to manufacturing, increasing exports, and basically taking jobs in the West, the United States, but also in Europe. So they need more investment. At the same time, they're trying to crack down on business analysis, where they've taken steps. They're trying to expand security laws to claim more and more as security. So they're doing two things that are contradictory. And I would say to these people that are over there who think now that you can get over there and make an investment and do well, the people that are doing well in this kind of investment are the people that are getting the commissions, bringing the money into China. The investors in China are not doing well right now. Yeah. And it's creating a real problem for China. You saw foreign direct investment into China at a 30-year low. And it should be. They're taking actions that are making it non-economic to invest there.
Right. Well, they got all those national security laws, these new laws that they implemented after they took over Hong Kong, to basically allow Chinese officials to march into any company and demand that the data is theirs. Give us all the data we want. Bob, you've done a masterful job on all of this. We so appreciate it. Are you planning on going back into a Trump administration?
I want to come back on your show. This is where I feel comfortable, right here.
Okay. Well, you're welcome all the time. We love having you. Great to see you, Bob. Thank you.